Queen Margaret I, born on March 1353, was a pivotal monarch who unified the kingdoms of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, creating what would later be known as the Kalmar Union. She was the daughter of King Valdemar IV of Denmark and Helvig of Schoenberg, making her a princess by birth. Margaret's early life was marked by her betrothal to Haakon VI of Norway, a strategic union that later played a key role in her reign. Her marriage to Haakon VI in 1363 strengthened the ties between Denmark and Norway, and in 1376, following the death of her father, Margaret became the regent for her son Olaf II, who was a king of both Denmark and Norway, despite being only a child at the time. Margaret ruled these kingdoms in his name, but her authority extended far beyond mere regency. When Olaf died unexpectedly in 1387, Margaret assumed the throne of Denmark and was crowned queen. She later took control of Norway as well, and was instrumental in negotiating the terms of the Kalmar Union in 1397, which brought Denmark, Norway, and Sweden under one crown. The union was formed under Margaret's leadership, with her son, Eric of Pomerania, becoming the king of all three nations. While the union was a major diplomatic achievement, it was also fraught with internal strife, particularly in Sweden, where many resented Danish rule. Margaret's reign as queen was marked by her shrewd diplomacy, political acumen, and determination to maintain control over her united kingdoms. She was a skilled negotiator, known for her ability to navigate the complex political landscapes of Northern Europe during the late 14th and early 15th centuries. She fought to secure her family's power, often through alliances and military engagements, although she was not always successful in maintaining her hold over Sweden. Her rule in Sweden was troubled by revolts and resistance from Swedish nobility, who saw Danish dominance as a threat to their autonomy. The situation in Sweden led to repeated uprisings, and while Margaret did manage to maintain the union for a time, the seeds of Swedish independence were planted during her reign. Margaret's death in 1412 marked the end of her direct influence over the kingdoms, though her legacy lived on in the Kalmar Union, which continued under the rule of her successor, Eric of Pomerania. Queen Margaret I died on October 28, 1412, in the city of Flensburg in what is now Germany. Her passing led to a power struggle among the nobles in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Although the Kalmar Union would persist for several more decades, the long-term stability of the Union would be compromised. Margaret is remembered as one of the most powerful and effective monarchs in Northern European history, known for her ability to unite three powerful kingdoms under her rule, despite the challenges and opposition she faced. Following Margaret's death in 1412, the Kalmar Union began to unravel due to a combination of internal strife, regional resistance, and the complex political dynamics of the three kingdoms. While her son, Eric of Pomerania, succeeded her as the king of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, his reign was less effective in maintaining the unity Margaret had established. Eric struggled to manage the competing interests of the nobility in each of the kingdoms, especially in Sweden, where discontent with Danish control remained strong. Margaret's legacy was a testament to her political vision and ability to wield power. She had successfully navigated a male-dominated political landscape in a time when women rarely held significant political authority. Margaret's ability to rule through her son and maintain influence even after his coronation was remarkable, ensuring her lasting impact on Northern European politics. Though Eric was her chosen heir, his inability to hold the kingdoms together marked the gradual decline of the Kalmar Union. The Swedish nobility, dissatisfied with the Danish control and the centralization of power in Denmark, eventually rebelled and sought greater autonomy, leading to Sweden's eventual exit from the Union in the early 16th century. Despite the challenges the Kalmar Union faced after Margaret's death, she is still regarded as a significant figure in Scandinavian history. She demonstrated that monarchs could wield immense power without the need for military conquest, relying instead on diplomacy, alliances, and a deep understanding of regional politics. Her reign also marked the rise of Denmark as a dominant power in Northern Europe, influencing the region for generations. Margaret's reign is often viewed as a golden period for Denmark, as she successfully expanded its territorial influence. Under her leadership, Denmark grew more unified, and the country's power in the Baltic region was strengthened. Additionally, her role in fostering connections between the various Scandinavian kingdoms helped shape the political and cultural landscape of medieval Europe, despite the challenges the Union would face after her passing. In the end, Queen Margaret I's reign was a defining chapter in the history of Scandinavia. She is remembered not just as a mother and regent, but as a visionary leader who brought together three kingdoms under one crown, creating a political entity that would leave a lasting mark on the history of Europe. Her legacy continues to be honored, and she is often regarded as one of the most successful monarchs in Scandinavian history. Though Margaret's death in 1412 marked the end of her direct influence over the kingdoms, her political legacy continued to resonate throughout Scandinavian history. In the years following her death, the Kalmar Union began to lose its cohesion, especially as Eric of Pomerania, her chosen successor, faced challenges in maintaining control. Eric's rule saw mounting tensions between the nobility of the three kingdoms, which had already been uneasy with the centralized control that Margaret had exerted. The Swedish nobility, in particular, felt increasingly alienated under the Union. They resented the power held by Denmark and the fact that many of the key positions in the government were filled by Danes. This dissatisfaction reached a tipping point in 1434 when Sweden, under the leadership of Engelbrekt Engelbrektsson, rose in revolt against the Union. The Engelbrekt Rebellion further exposed the weaknesses of the Kalmar Union and led to a shift in Swedish politics. Although Sweden was not fully independent at that point, the rebellion and subsequent unrest eventually culminated in Sweden's exit from the Union in 1523 under King Gustav I Vasa, marking the official end of the Kalmar Union. Despite these challenges, Margaret's influence as a diplomatic force is remembered. She had been an early proponent of the idea that unity could be achieved through a shared monarchy rather than through military conquest or annexation. The Kalmar Union, even though short-lived in its ideal form, showed the potential of cooperation among nations that had been historically divided. Though it eventually unraveled, the Union fostered a sense of Scandinavian unity that would influence future interactions between the Nordic nations. While her son Eric ultimately failed to secure the long-term success of the Union, Margaret's reign provided a model for how a monarch could act as a unifying figure in a time of political fragmentation. Margaret's political acumen and her ability to navigate complex international diplomacy were central to her success in creating the Union in the first place. Her capacity for leadership, strategic alliances, and ability to manage both internal and external pressures remains one of the most remarkable aspects of her rule. Queen Margaret I also had a personal and emotional investment in the stability of the union she forged. The well-being of her son, Eric, was a central concern throughout her life, and her commitment to securing his position as the ruler of the Union was evident. Despite facing immense challenges, Margaret was able to guide her son's ascension to the throne of three powerful kingdoms, ensuring his coronation and placing him in a position to continue her vision, even if he was ultimately unable to fulfill it as she had. In the broader context of European history, Queen Margaret I's role in uniting three major Scandinavian kingdoms was a rare achievement for a woman in the medieval period, and her reign stands as a significant example of female power in a male-dominated political world. Her ability to rise above the gender norms of her time and wield real political influence, even after the deaths of her husband and son, solidified her reputation as one of the most formidable rulers of the late Middle Ages. In addition to her political legacy, Queen Margaret I is also remembered as a key figure in the cultural and social developments of Scandinavia during her reign. Her period as queen saw some advances in the arts and trade, which helped to elevate the region in the broader European context. Under her reign, the Scandinavian kingdoms began to develop stronger economic ties with the rest of Europe, fostering a growing sense of interconnectedness and trade across the continent. Though the Kalmar Union did not last, the historical importance of Margaret's reign is undeniable. She was not only the queen who unified Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, but also a mother and a ruler who demonstrated immense perseverance in the face of political and personal challenges. Her vision of a united Scandinavia, although eventually undermined by internal divisions and Swedish independence, laid the groundwork for future cooperation between the Nordic countries. Margaret remains a central figure in the history of the region and continues to be regarded as a powerful symbol of strength, diplomacy, and resilience in medieval Europe. After Queen Margaret I's passing, while the Kalmar Union was on the decline, her impact on Scandinavian history remained profound. Even though Eric of Pomerania's rule could not maintain the union she had carefully crafted, her legacy as the architect of Scandinavian unity still carried weight throughout the next several generations. While Sweden's eventual separation from the Union in the early 16th century was a major blow to her vision, Margaret's diplomatic strategies and her efforts to hold together Denmark, Norway, and Sweden in the face of internal dissent became a defining feature of her reign. Despite the Union's collapse, Margaret's role as a female monarch in a medieval world dominated by men continued to resonate in historical narratives. She was a woman who not only navigated the complex political dynamics of her time, but did so in a way that transformed the very structure of Northern Europe. In an era when women were often excluded from direct political power, Margaret's reign demonstrated that with wisdom, determination, and strategic alliances, a woman could effectively rule three kingdoms and leave an indelible mark on history. Her leadership was particularly notable because it transcended the typical regency that many women were relegated to in medieval Europe. Margaret didn't simply govern on behalf of a male heir, she ruled in her own right, cementing her place as one of the most influential monarchs of her time. Her skill in negotiation and diplomacy was evident in how she handled the delicate relationships between the Nordic kingdoms, balancing the demands and expectations of the nobility with her own vision for the region's future. Although her son Eric faced setbacks during his reign, Margaret's accomplishments still had a lasting effect on the Nordic political landscape. For instance, her reign spurred a sense of collective identity among the three kingdoms, which, while not preserved in the form of the Kalmar Union, would continue to shape the political developments in Scandinavia for centuries to come. The interconnectedness she fostered, even in the face of discontent, contributed to a shared cultural and economic foundation that endured long after her death. Even as the Kalmar Union faded, Margaret's influence continued to echo through the political culture of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The notion of Scandinavian unity was not entirely lost, and future attempts at cooperation between the countries, including economic agreements and military alliances, can be seen as a direct result of the groundwork she laid. Though the Union did not endure, Margaret's approach to governance, her focus on pragmatism, and her ability to maintain stability across vast and often fractious territories were qualities that left a lasting impression on her descendants. Her death also set in motion a series of events that highlighted the challenges of dynastic rule. The absence of her personal leadership left a power vacuum that revealed how difficult it was to sustain a union of such diverse kingdoms. Eric of Pomerania, although crowned king, struggled with the ambitious and independent-minded nobility of the three nations, particularly in Sweden. Swedish nobles sought greater autonomy, which ultimately led to their withdrawal from the Union, culminating in the election of Gustav I Vasa as king in 1523. While this marked the formal end of the Kalmar Union, it also marked the beginning of the rise of modern nation-states in Scandinavia. Margaret's strategic use of marriage and diplomacy to secure alliances between her son and neighboring powers also contributed to a more secure and interconnected Scandinavian region. Her careful cultivation of relationships with foreign powers, including England and the Hanseatic League, strengthened her position and that of her kingdom. Even after her death, the importance of diplomatic channels and alliances remained an essential aspect of Scandinavian foreign policy. Though the Kalmar Union did not survive intact, Queen Margaret I's role as a trailblazing female monarch, a shrewd diplomat, and a unifier of diverse kingdoms ensures her place in history. Her reign marks a significant chapter in the evolution of Scandinavian politics and governance, illustrating the complexity of managing diverse kingdoms and peoples while striving for unity. Her legacy, despite the Union's collapse, laid the foundation for a greater sense of shared identity and historical continuity across Denmark, Norway, and Sweden.